Howdy y'all, welcome back to another video. As you can see, today I'm trying something out that's brand new. I'm doing a face cam capture with this video. I just wanted to see what the response would be to this. You know, some people prefer uh, a face cam while doing videos like this, instruction videos. Some people don't really care. So I just figured I'd try it out and see what everybody says, if they like it or not. Just let me know down in the comments what you think. Today I'm going to be discussing the carbon fee and dividend, which is a policy on Yang's 2020 campaign page. So the main difference between this and carbon tax plans, which is what most countries in Europe have, is that a carbon tax typically is enacted after a certain level of emissions. So once you reach that cap level, let's just say an arbitrary number, 10 million tons of CO2 emissions. So after that level of emissions, anything above that is then taxed at a certain rate. Uh, the reason that this is an issue is because it still allows most larger corporations to, to emit a certain level of CO2, and that at that level of, 10 million tons of CO2 emissions, it's not really helping. I mean, they're still emitting so much into the environment, and especially at the, at the point we are right now with climate, there really isn't. We're almost at the point of no return, basically. So any emissions other than natural, right? Any man-made emissions at this point are doing nothing to help the environment and everything to hurt it. So the reason that the carbon fee is so important is because it does something completely different. It doesn't have a cap level. Instead, what it says is that for every ton of carbon, of CO2 that is emitted into the atmosphere by a corporation, they will pay $40 on that ton of emission. So if a company emits 10 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere, they'll pay $400 million in fees for that CO2 emission. So what's great about this is that, so with, I'm leaning forward so I can draw on the screen, so I know it's going to look weird. So one of two things can happen. One, you can either have fewer emissions, pardon my, my drawing skills. So you can have fewer emissions, or you could have revenue. I'm just going to do REV. So either of these is good, right? I mean, if they keep emitting the same amount, then we're getting a ton of revenue. But if they lower their overall emissions, because the incentives will be much fewer at that point to actually emit higher levels of carbon dioxide, then the amount that they emit will be less. And either way, we win uh, in regard to climate change. So another part of his plan is that, let's say that, so we're going to look at the revenue, right? So we have two different lanes of distribution for the revenue sources, right? So on his webpage, what he says is that 50% of all revenue will go to each of these streams, each of these locations. So what that means is that if we get $10 million from a corporation in the carbon, from the carbon fee, 5 million will go to reinvestment into renewable energy sources, most likely replacing coal factories, coal plants, that generate over 65% of all of our electricity for the United States. So if we replace even half of those coal plants in the next 5 to 10 years with nuclear plants or wind farms or solar farms, whatever it be, the amount of CO2 emissions will drop significantly. The other stream that he wants to use this for, right, the other area that he wants to actually use this carbon revenue for is 50% will go into paying the UBI, the freedom dividend, which of course will increase will increase economic success in the country, economic health, and the more people who have spendable income, the more people will have free time to be able to do things that they want, such as nonprofit activities, such as helping the environment, picking up trash on their free time. So both of these lanes of revenue sources help the environment significantly. And the most important thing, again, to note, going back from the beginning of the video, is that this doesn't work like most carbon taxes. It doesn't have a cap. Instead, there's a fee on every single ton of carbon emitted. It works much more like a sales tax than it does an income progressive tax. I feel like that's probably an okay comparison. So that's it for today. There isn't really much more to go over in regard to the carbon fee or the carbon dividend. This is basically it. It's a pretty simple policy. Getting it enacted shouldn't be too difficult, based on the fact that we're hoping, I guess, that more and more people over time are becoming more aware of the problem with climate change and the problem with CO2 emissions in the environment, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, this is the entire plan. I hope you guys liked it. I hope it was somewhat educational. And again, if you want me to continue using like the face cam, let me know. If not, I'll just go back to doing it the way I was doing it before. I had to rep my Yang merchandise, so yeah, I just wanted to do that. Thank y'all for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope to see y'all again in the near future.